The film begins by introducing a guy named Jack. He's sitting in a restaurant in Mexico, having a good time watching a football game. Not long after, a guy named Eduardo, who's an accountant for a cartel, shows up at the restaurant with his girlfriend and his buddies. When they walk in, Eduardo's girlfriend wonders why they're eating at this rundown place. He tells her that the food here is super tasty. Meanwhile, outside the restaurant, a gorgeous lady named Clara is driving her car. But her car suddenly breaks down right in front of the restaurant. Then she quickly tries to fix her car. Soon after, when one of Eduardo's guys sees the beautiful and attractive Clara in trouble, he goes over to help her out. Back inside, Eduardo and his girlfriend have just ordered their food. But out of the blue, he asks his girlfriend if he can excuse himself for a moment as they wait for their food to arrive. Shortly after Eduardo left, Jack suddenly needed to use the restroom too and rushed over. But as he reached the bathroom door, one of Eduardo's guys stopped him. It turned out that Eduardo was having an affair with a restaurant employee in there. At that time, Jack insisted on going in, so Eduardo's men ended up beating him. However, Jack didn't just take it and fought back against Eduardo's men, making one of them faint. Jack then entered the restroom and interrupted Eduardo, who was having an intimate moment. Surprisingly, Jack's real intention in going to the restroom wasn't to urinate, but to snatch Eduardo's flash disc necklace. With that flash disc, Jack was able to steal all the money that belonged to Eduardo's boss, Ted Garrow. Soon after, Eduardo yelled for help, and his men rushed to assist him, but Jack's friend, Billy, stopped them in their tracks. Then, a shootout erupted between Jack, Billy, and Eduardo's men. Fortunately, Jack and Billy managed to escape through a back exit of the restaurant. To add to the surprise, Clara turned out to be Jack's lover, and she swiftly incapacitated one of Eduardo's men who was trying to help him. Afterward, Clara joined them, and Jack quickly instructed Billy and Clara to make a hasty exit. Jack needed to block the door to prevent Eduardo's men from chasing them. Before they left, he handed the stolen flash disc to Clara. Then, once Billy and Clara were gone, the Mexican police finally arrived, putting a fight to Eduardo's men. However, one of the Mexican officers seemed irritated after realizing that Jack had caused trouble. Then, he beat up Jack before taking him to the police station. Shortly after, the scene then shifts to a Mexican senator named Nantes, who was in the middle of an interview with journalists. During the interview, Nantes announced his plan to build a wall between Mexico and the United States. He hoped that this would put a stop to the illegal flow of goods between the two countries. Meanwhile, Jack was being interrogated by the Mexican police, but not long after, his friend from the United States Embassy, Price, paid him a visit. Before talking to Jack, Price requested some privacy from the Jalisco police. Once the police left the room, Price scolded Jack for getting caught by the police. It turned out that Price was the one who had assigned Jack to steal all of Ted Garrow's money. There, Jack mentioned that he had his own plans for the mission. Upon hearing this, Price explained that Jack would be sent to a Mexican prison for 3 days before being returned to the United States. Meanwhile, Ted Garrow, the boss of Mexico's largest cartel, was seen scolding Eduardo's bodyguards. He believed that Price was incapable of protecting Eduardo, especially now that Eduardo had lost a very important flash disk. Fortunately, the flash disk couldn't be accessed without a password. At the same time, Ted Garrow's wife appeared and asked for fashion advice. Ted Garrow, who had been very intimidating, suddenly became gentle in front of his wife. However, after his wife left, he goes back to his cruel self and immediately killed Eduardo's bodyguard. The scene shifts back to Jack, who was about to enter a tough Mexican prison. Surprisingly, he appeared calm and content, even though this prison was known as the harshest one in Mexico. On the other hand, Clara and Billy were attempting to access the flash disk they had stolen. Luckily, they managed to crack the password on it. However, she was in for a shock because they discovered that all of Ted Garrow's money was stored in a Mexican prison. It made them realize that Jack had known about this all along, which explained why he seemed so pleased about going to prison. At that time, they also understood why Jack had turned himself in to the police. The next day, inside the prison, Jack had just finished breakfast. But when he tried to sit down, a prison boss named Don Carlo forcibly kicked him away. Jack, however, refused to be intimidated by Don Carlo and still attempted to sit. This infuriated Don Carlo, who ordered one of his men to attack Jack. In fact, he even tried to attack Jack with a screwdriver, but Jack easily fought him and his men before the guards intervened. In the evening, Clara disguised herself as a doctor and went to the prison, pretending that she was there to treat the injuries of an American prisoner who had gotten into a fight with another inmate earlier in the day. That prisoner was none other than her boyfriend, Jack. On the other hand, Billy and his friend named Tank also entered the prison, posing as electricians. They were invited by the prison warden to check on the electrical server. Meanwhile, Clara made her way into the treatment room and finally met Jack. She then shared their plan to put the guards to sleep. Hearing this, Jack asked how they intended to do it. Clara explained that Billy and Tank would release gas through the ventilation system. She also gave Jack a mask in preparation. The scene shifts to Billy and Tank, who were doing their thing. Sadly, it didn't take long for a guard to spot them. Tank quickly went after the guard, but he managed to get away and told his buddy to set off the alarm. When the alarm went off, the other guards rushed over and finally caught Clara. They asked her why she was wearing a mask, and Clara said it was to protect herself from their bad breath. Then she kicked one of the guards. Just then, Jack showed up and took care of all the guards. But during the chaos, one of the guards locked the prison exit, trapping Jack and the others inside. Long story short, Jack and his crew regrouped. At that time, Jack asked Billy to use a welding torch to force open the prison door, while Tank tied up the remaining jailers since Jack had already dealt with most of them. Soon after, Jack had Clara change into the warden's clothes and borrowed her cell phone because he needed to call for help. Then he reached out to Price. There he told Price to open the prison door from the outside since they were stuck inside. He also mentioned that all of Ted Garrow's money was stored in the prison. Unfortunately, Price couldn't help Jack right away because he had an important meeting with U.S. government officials to attend. A few minutes later, Jack and Clara tried to reach out to Tank to check if he had managed to tie up all the prison guards. At first, Tank hesitated to answer the call, even though he wasn't busy. Eventually, he picked up and said he was changing his clothes. Clara then instructed Tank to meet Jack in the hallway near the kitchen. After Jack and Tank met up, Jack reminded Tank not to harm anyone, but also urged him to stay alert while they were still in the prison. Meanwhile, Ted Garrow got word that one of his own men had betrayed him. The betrayer had also leaked the password information from the stolen flash drive that Jack had taken. Upon hearing this, Ted Garrow immediately interrogated the traitor, only to discover that this man had been working for Jack in disguise for a long time. Realizing this, Ted Garrow ordered his other men to eliminate the traitor. Afterward, Ted Garrow made a call to the prison, and coincidentally, Jack answered the phone. To Jack's surprise, Ted Garrow was aware that Jack was behind bars and planning to steal his money. Then, Ted Garrow threatened Jack, warning him that if he dared to take the money, he would hunt down Jack and his crew. He also revealed that the spy Jack had sent was now dead. After getting threats from Ted Garrow, Jack went over to Billy, who was still working on opening the exit door. He told Billy to be prepared because Ted Garrow would likely send his troops to deal with them. Then Jack walked toward the cells and unexpectedly bumped into Don Carlo. It turns out that Don Carlo, a former Mexican soldier, is an expert sniper. Soon after, Jack introduced himself as a former U.S. Marine, and Don Carlo learned that Jack was after Ted Garrow's money hidden in the prison. However, Don Carlo told Jack to watch out because Ted Garrow would send some tough troops. He also mentioned that he used to be Ted Garrow's right-hand man, but got imprisoned just because they had different opinions. Curious, Jack asked Don Carlo about the type of troops Ted Garrow would send. Don Carlo explained that Ted Garrow would send operators, civilian military-trained people skilled in combat. Jack then found Clara and told her to prepare for the arrival of a formidable army. He also asked about Tank's whereabouts because he hadn't seen him lately. Soon after, Clara checked the CCTV and saw Tank doing something in the changing room. After that, Jack hurried into the room to find Tank. When he got there, he saw that Tank had just taken down one of the guards using a hoe. This made Jack pretty upset because he had warned Tank not to kill anyone. Just as Jack and Tank were about to have a showdown, Clara stepped in and told them to stop because Ted Garrow's troops had arrived. Surprisingly, these troops had access to the prison. In the end, Jack and Tank didn't fight because they needed to prepare for Ted Garrow's troops. As they were about to approach Clara, they ran into Ted Garrow's troops, and a shootout erupted between them. During the chaos, Tank decided to make a run for it and go somewhere else. Seeing this, Jack asked Clara to unlock the cell door in Block C so he could seek refuge. However, when Jack entered the cell, he was attacked by one of the prisoners who tried to strangle him. Fortunately, Jack managed to push the prisoner away, and one of Ted Garrow's troops promptly eliminated the attacker. Then, while Ted Garrow's troops were busy taking down the other prisoners, Jack suddenly reappeared and took them out. On the other hand, Billy had an unexpected visitor from one of Ted Garrow's squad members. In a crucial moment, Billy shot the member and successfully defeated him. Meanwhile, Clara was also visited by one of Ted Garrow's squad members, but she decided to slip away and hide elsewhere. Sadly, Clara, who had been hiding, was eventually found. Just as members of Ted Garrow's squad were about to harm her, Jack came to the rescue in the nick of time and saved Clara. In short, Jack, Clara, and Billy reunited, but they still had no clue where Tank was. Then Jack suggested they head to the back because there was a chest containing all of Ted Garrow's money. When they reached the room, they opened the chest, only to find out that all of Ted Garrow's money had mysteriously vanished. Realizing this, Jack contacted Price to tell him that they might have been set up because the money wasn't in the prison. Upon hearing this, Price advised Jack and the others to immediately leave the prison and abandon their robbery mission. However, just as Price was about to leave, he was suddenly attacked by unknown troops and died. Knowing that, Jack, Clara, and Billy were left disappointed since they had been planning this heist for years, only for it to end in failure. Soon after, Jack informed Clara and Billy that he needed to find Tank before they could leave the prison. While searching for Tank, he overheard Tank talking on the phone, revealing that he had taken all of Ted Garrow's money. In the end, Jack realized that Tank had double-crossed him and was conspiring with others. Shortly after, he took Tank's cell phone and declared he was in control of the prison. He instructed Tank to bring a bag containing all of Ted Garrow's money. Initially, Tank complied, but he suddenly attacked Jack during the exchange. In the fight, Tank grabbed a weapon and tried to harm Jack, but he managed to turn the tables and defeat Tank. Then Jack presented all the money to Clara and Billy, who were happy because their hard work had paid off. Soon after, the prison lights went out, and Jack knew it was the work of Ted Garrow's second squad. Jack then approached Don Carlo and the other prisoners, offering them money and freedom in exchange for their help against Ted Garrow's troops. Don Carlo explained that the second squad sent by Ted Garrow was known as Buzz, an international death squad. Despite the danger, the prisoners agreed to assist Jack in return for their freedom and rewards. Then Jack asked Clara to unlock the cell door in Block 3 and provided the prisoners with weapons from the guard's arsenal. After that, Don Carlo told Jack to lead the way since he and the other prisoners were confident they could defeat Ted Garrow's troops. Long story short, Jack, Clara, and Billy hurriedly left in a car using a back road. Meanwhile, Ted Garrow's troops, who had entered the prison, were surrounded and defeated by Don Carlo and the other prisoners until none of them were left standing. The following day, Clara was seen organizing something in their hiding spot while Jack and Billy were waiting elsewhere. However, as Clara was about to depart, she was suddenly confronted at gunpoint and kidnapped by a group of men. Surprisingly, the person behind her kidnapping was one of Nantez's men, the senator who had plans to build a wall between Mexico and the United States. There, Nantez contacted Jack and proposed exchanging the stolen money for Clara's safe return. In the end, Jack and Billy successfully completed the exchange with Nantez. During the exchange, Nantez revealed that he knew all of Jack's plans because it turned out that Tank was working for him. Not only that, but Nantez also confessed to being the one who killed Price. When the exchange was done, Nantes discovered that the real money was only on the top of the pile, and the bag only contained paper. Knowing that, he got furious and ordered his men to eliminate Jack, Billy, and Clara. Surprisingly, all of Nantes' men fled when Don Carlo and the prisoners arrived to help Jack. There, Don Carlo advised Jack to leave, and they would handle Nantes. In the afternoon, Ted Garrow threatened Jack over the phone. However, at the same time, Ted Garrow found himself surrounded by Don Carlo and the prisoners ready to take him down. Unexpectedly, all the prisoners gathered around Ted Garrow, who had imprisoned some of them before, but he was a man of pride and chose to die rather than be killed by his former subordinates. And the film ends. The moral lesson from this film is never trust someone named Tank, especially if they're carrying a bag of money.